Brace the rudders! Raise the sails! Raise the sails!
Captain, an unidentified ship is approaching. Over.
Roger. Wait, is that an enterprise sales solution?
Reach sales professionals, not professional sailors. With LinkedIn ads, you can target the right people by industry, job title, and more. We'll even give you a $100 credit on your next campaign. Get started today at linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply.
Growing your e-commerce business comes with plenty of hurdles, but shipping shouldn't be one of them. Well, here's some good news. Powerful e-commerce shipping software called ShipExcel from Pitney Bowes. With ShipExcel, you can generate discounted shipping labels for both online and offline orders. That saves time and money with everything right at your fingertips. Start your free trial of ShipExcel from Pitney Bowes today.
I recently heard Amy Poehler say that either you're annoying or boring. You have to pick one. And I fully think I fall into the annoying camp rather than the boring.
Welcome to How To, where we welcome you no matter which camp you fall into. You know, each week on the show, we talk with a listener about something they're struggling to navigate, and we bring in an expert with personal experience to give them guidance. I'm Carvel Wallace. And Amy Poehler aside, if we were to turn back the clock to a young Jesse 30 years ago, I don't think we'd find a kid who was annoying, excited, maybe, excellent student, absolutely, enthusiastic, for sure. It's funny because these are the traits we'd all say we'd want to see in our kids. But for Jessie, it felt like she might be too much.
I was just a really passionate kid. And in fourth grade, I just have such a visceral memory of trying out for the school play and just closing my eyes and singing this solo so passionately and opening my eyes. And I had a teacher who was laughing at me. Oh. And that was my experience throughout my childhood was just, you're just so enthusiastic. Everything is too much, too loud, too aggressive about your ideas, interrupting people.
Feeling okay about yourself in grade school is hard enough, and it's especially hard when everyone around you is always telling you to tone it down. Even though Jessie's grades were okay, and she was hitting all the academic benchmarks, her perceptive mom still had a feeling that there was some kind of trouble with her kid.
My mom sensed that there was something going on because I started hating school. And I mean, to her credit, she did everything she could. I grew up in Mississippi and she drove me all the way to Atlanta, Georgia to a professional who gave me IQ tests and all the tests possible and basically sent me home with she's just a really bright kid who's bored in school.
So there was nothing diagnosed, which meant that Jessie, her family, and her teachers had no choice but to treat her challenges and disorganization and social difficulties as just personal failings.
I internalized a whole heck of a lot of shame growing up. And in my 20s, I started and dropped out of 3 different college programs. On my 4th one, not being able to finish, I sought help from a school counselor who targeted it right away and sent me to NYU for a diagnosis.
And that diagnosis was ADHD, attention deficit hyperactive disorder. ADHD is something that everyone has heard of, but that is still frequently and deeply misunderstood. The most up-to-date thought on it now recognizes it as a kind of wiring of the brain rather than some kind of personality defect. It's often linked to low dopamine production, which can lead to things like inattention or hyperattention, impulsivity, and low or difficult to maintain motivation. The old pop culture image of the ADHD kid is usually a boy jumping around, bouncing his knee, unable to listen or follow directions. But that's just one way it shows up in some people. For others, and that includes girls, it can look like hyperfocus, difficult interpersonal relations, sometimes depression or even substance abuse as people look to compensate for what they feel are their own personal shortcomings. See, ADHD is a form of neurodivergence, and part of taking a neurodivergence into the world, especially as an adult, is finding ways to operate that match the way our brains work, and to hopefully let go of the shame we feel about being different.
I saw a meme online that really resonated with me. And on one side, it has ADHD and what the guilt is. So it's like the feeling of letting people down, missing appointments, not being who people need you to be, professionally not meeting your goals. And then on the other side, it's like ADHD with anxiety. And that is like being able to function, but you need a bunch of timers and you need a bunch of reminders and you're constantly running lists in your head.
For people like Jesse, ADHD can become tied up with anxiety, a form of compensation as you run your life via alarms and lists, holding on to control and perfectionism because you fear that if you relax for just 1 minute, you'll drop all the balls and let everyone down. Stress becomes a form of coping. That's how Jessie ran her life in her 20s and 30s, especially in her work as a graphic designer, which lent itself to a kind of hyper-perfectionism. It made her work outstanding, but living that way was also just exhausting.
As I've gotten more mature and I'm now hitting the second, third decade of my career, I realize that I no longer want to live my life in this constant state of anxiety, but that is the state that has allowed me to be professionally successful in my career. And I'm just realizing that's not a healthy way to live my life.
So a few years ago, Jessie tried to relax. But without control, she was back in an unstructured world that feels in some ways worse than ever before.
As I let go of the anxiety, I end up in these shame spirals where it's like, I let this person down. I dropped the ball. I was late to pick up my kid and I missed a deadline. And my spouse is like really annoyed because I keep leaving the dishes on the counter. So it's like either I internalize the guilt or I live in a state of anxiety so that I don't put people that I love out. And I just kind of am wondering what's the right balance.
So on today's show, we're looking for the Goldilocks zone. We're going to see if we can't figure out how to navigate ADHD without using anxiety as a coping mechanism, and how to accept our ADHD and its impacts without falling into a shame spiral. And lucky for you and me, to be honest, we have the perfect expert to help us do it. Stay with us. If you've shopped online, chances are you've bought from a business powered by Shopify. You know that purple Shop Pay button you see at checkout? The one that makes buying so incredibly easy? Well, that's Shopify. There's a reason so many businesses sell with it, because Shopify makes it incredibly easy to start and run your own business. Shopify is behind 10% of all e-commerce in the US, from household names to brands just getting started. Shopify gives you hundreds of beautiful, ready-to-go templates to express your brand's style, tackle important tasks like inventory, payment, and analytics all in one place. Spread your brand's word with built-in marketing and email tools, and that iconic purple Shop Pay button is used by millions of businesses around the world. It's why Shop Pay has the best converting checkout on the planet. Your customers already love it. If you want to see fewer carts being abandoned, it's time for you to head over to Shopify. Sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/howto. Go to shopify.com/howto, shopify.com/howto. This episode is brought to you by Built. If you're paying rent every month without earning anything in return, consider joining Built, the rewards program designed for renters who want to earn something for their largest monthly expense. By paying rent through Built, you earn flexible points that can be redeemed towards hundreds of hotels and airlines, a future rent payment, your next Lyft ride, and more. But it doesn't stop there. Built is about making your entire neighborhood more rewarding. You can dine out at your favorite local restaurants and earn additional points, get VIP treatment at certain fitness studios, and enjoy exclusive experiences just for Built members every month. Built is turning a monthly expense into an opportunity to earn rewards and discover the best that your neighborhood has to offer. Your rent is finally working for you. Earn points on rent and around your neighborhood wherever you call home by going to joinbuilt.com/howto. That's JOIN joinbilt.com/howto. And make sure to use the unique URL, joinbilt.com/howto. Welcome back to How To. Our listener, Jessie, found out in college that she has ADHD, and now she's looking for a way to get off the pendulum swings between anxiety and shame. And fortunately, our expert knows all about how to do just that. Dr. Sarah Wheeler is an educational psychologist whose entire career revolves around working with kids with ADHD, which is why it's so strange that it took her years to recognize it in herself.
I think my story is somewhat similar to Jessie's. I was kind of a bright, bored kid with a big personality and a lot of humor. I did a lot of things like showing my third grade teacher that I knew all the times tables and then just leaving for math class for a year and roaming the halls. In high school and college and even grad school, my friends used to joke I had like two modes: talking in class, like constantly, or being literally asleep. And so, I was the kind of
So
person
relatable.
that could, because of my compensatory skills, I could in college not read the book, and I'd skim it the night before and write a paper in the middle of the night and get a B+. And of course, all that time I was depressed, I was drinking, I was doing all the things to account for how exhausted I was and how ashamed I felt. The turning point was really becoming a mother. There are estrogen changes during the process of pregnancy and birth and breastfeeding that increase ADHD symptoms. Sleep deprivation increases ADHD symptoms. So I was kind of describing all of the things that I was struggling with. And I had a friend who was like, oh yeah, it's because you have ADHD. And I was like, I don't have ADHD. I'm a fucking ADHD expert. Okay. I got my doctorate in ADHD. I give workshops on ADHD. And to kind of humor
So
her,
funny.
I got an assessment. I came home from this assessment where I thought this guy's going to say like, what a fraud. And instead he was like, yeah, you totally have ADHD. And I went home to my husband and I said, listen to the questions this guy asked me. Do you think this is true about me? Do I have trouble reading the instructions before I start something? And he was like, are you joking? Is this a setup? I don't know what you want me to say. Yeah, obviously, that's just you. And so I think that we are learning more about girls and women, and that is part of what I benefited from. But I think that I did have that, kind of Kaiser Soze, usual suspects experience that Jessie had, where you look back over your life and you say, I'm a person, everybody's complicated, but if I add this piece in, does it help me understand some things?
Dr. Wheeler can relate to a lot of what Jessie has shared, and from her professional experience, she has some good ideas about how Jessie might reframe some of the ways she thinks about her ADHD.
This piece, of course, about is anxiety good, and maybe seeing if we can shift that concept of anxiety to something a little bit more like activation for you. And I can explain that more. I'm also hearing a lot in Jessie's history of what we call in the neurodiversity world masking, which is what a lot of neurodivergent folks do and kind of liken the experience to trying to speak in a foreign language. It's trying to appear neurotypical or more like our society's definition of normal. Girls tend to do it more than non-girls because we are acculturated to be pleasing and compliant and to meet people's expectations, right? To be the organizers, especially as a mom, but even as a young girl. So I'm hearing that you were doing the two kind of components of masking, camouflaging your neurodivergent traits, the things that make you ADHD, and compensating. And that leads to total burnout. And that happens for a lot of us at some kind of turning point in our lives, college, a new job, parenthood.
This is an interesting breakdown. I mean, I think a lot about the masking thing. I relate to it a lot, but I haven't yet heard the breakdown of camouflaging versus compensating. Can you talk us a little bit through that?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a dichotomy. They're kind of both things that we do when we mask. So to camouflage our neurodivergent traits, right? I hear, Jesse, you talking about, trying to tamp down your enthusiasm, right? You got this message really on that wasn't okay, that it wasn't normal. And so everybody wants to do well and be liked. We want to belong. And so it's such a natural coping mechanism to take that feedback about things that other people find uncomfortable and try to change it. And you've got a lot of strengths, right? You were bright. You had that psychologist say, this is just a bored, gifted kid. So you had a lot of things to compensate for your tricky traits with, or your undesired traits with. But what happens is we kind of outrun ourselves, and it's exhausting. And then the other thing that happens, Carvel and Jesse, is that we end up tamping down on the things that we love and that bring us joy. And so it can have that kind of like deadening effect. And it can confuse us about what are the things that we actually love about ourselves or the way that our brains work.
I just have so many memories that I could unpack of my childhood were mostly around wondering why I couldn't be more liked and what I needed to do in order to be more pleasing to people and what I needed to do to fit in a culture where I look back at it now, I'm like, why was I so obsessed with fitting in with that? Because that was kind of boring. But as a kid, you don't have that perspective.
No, you just want to belong.
You just want people to like you and accept you and invite you over to their slumber party.
And that's safety, right? That's safety as a kid.
Yeah. I have a lot of that I would like to say that I've been able to let go of as an adult, but I know it's still in there.
The way Dr. Wheeler found out she has ADHD is actually more common than you would think. My own kid was about 12 years old when the healthcare provider confirmed an ADHD diagnosis. And while I was sitting in the parents' information session reading about the traits and experiences of kids with ADHD, I started to recognize my own entire childhood flashing before my eyes. It was amazing and overwhelming to finally have a unified explanation for all that I had experienced. But it was also heartbreaking to think about all of the shame and self-hatred and embarrassment that I experienced growing up because I felt like I was just made wrong for the world. I didn't know that it wasn't my fault.
I wish I could go off and live in this world where I could just be totally unabashedly myself. But we live in a world where to function in society, I have to do things like, pay bills and make doctor's appointments and, things that are not my skill set. So I can't just be my full artistic, loud, singing all the time self. I have to figure out another version of myself to be sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, I have some thoughts about how you might do that. I mean, I hear you talking about balance. A critical shift is in what's called the medical model of disability, which is neurodivergence is something to be assessed, diagnosed, and fixed, right? You're the one that has to do the fixing because you're the one that has something wrong with you. But in the neurodiversity affirming world, which is where I do my coaching and my teaching and my thinking about myself from as much as I can and as hard as it can be, we identify the challenge in the fit, in the environment, which you brought up, Jesse. You already know this, that the environment makes a difference, right? And so then we're saying the intervention is really about learning about your brain, right? Understanding that there are things you love about it and things that actually, not just for other people, but for you, feel hard sometimes, that you might want to change or work around, right? And then trying to find what a lot of neurodiversity scholars would call a positive niche for yourself, which can be a job, right? It can be a friend group. It can be relationships. Wherever there's an environment that plays up the strengths of your ADHD traits and doesn't pull too much and punish you too much for the things that are tricky for your brain to do.
The good news is that Jessie has already taken a step towards finding a positive niche for herself. Besides graphic design, she started working as an educator in an after-school theater program for middle schoolers.
It's like this place where being too much is finally okay, because it makes me like somebody who can express my emotions. I can convey and come up with really outrageous ideas that actually a community of people will find exciting to see performed on a stage rather than feel threatened by.
Right. I love that you're doing that.
It's so rewarding. But then I have to deal with, making sure that I'm including my fellow teachers and that I don't just steamroll over them, that I'm taking other people's ideas into account. So,
right. So there's stuff you want to be able to pay attention to, right? Of course, we all have that. Neurotypical, neurodivergent. We wouldn't have a functioning society. I mean, as functioning as it seems to be right now.
It's a stretch, but yes.
If we weren't paying attention to other people, right? We want that. But there's this subtle distinction that I've heard you already talk about. You use the word guilt. I often talk about, when we're ADHDers, we have kind of two buckets of things to deal with or pay attention to. Our ADHD traits, and notice I don't use the word symptoms. That's a medical model term, right? I'm just talking about the way that your brain is, not that it's good or bad. And our shame about those traits and the way that we feel about them and other people respond to them. Usually it's more about the latter, how other people respond to them. And that builds up over years and years. So the challenge is, and this is a lifelong journey, I'm totally still on it. When you reduce that shame, when you can just look at it as a fact that everybody's brain is different, that your brain has these traits, can you get more clean of a clear look about which things you want to work on and pay attention and which things you don't really care about and you're going to let go? Because you need to conserve your energy, right? And so that's what you, I think, have been doing, which happens to a lot of neurodivergent people, particularly undiagnosed ones. We develop anxiety because of that compensation, right? We end up using so many strategies to kind of mask our neurodivergence that it makes us incredibly anxious. And so, yes, anxiety a little bit is good, right? You got to look out for dangers. But I like to think of it as like, what do you want to activate towards? Right? What do you want to attend to and focus on rather than what happens with us in shame when we're hyperactive folks? Girls, by the way, tend to get hyperactive more with talking and thinking than moving around. But for people like us, when we feel shame, we usually don't lay on the couch for a month. We start doing shit. We get overactive. And kind of that's what I see as becoming a problem for you.
How we feel about our ADHD traits often has more to do with how other people have treated us over the course of our lives than anything else. If they criticize us and shame us, then we naturally grow up feeling embarrassed and ashamed. And then, of course, we try to compensate and mask so people won't notice that we're different. And this, of course, can lead to anxiety about trying to keep the performance going and depression and self-hatred when we feel we can't. So how do we find a healthy path? And how do we do that knowing that other people might never change the way they treat us? That's what we're going to get into after the break. Stay with us. This episode is brought to you by Built. If you're paying rent every month without earning anything in return, consider joining Built, the rewards program designed for renters who want to earn something for their largest monthly expense. By paying rent through Built, you earn flexible points that can be redeemed towards hundreds of hotels and airlines, a future rent payment, your next Lyft ride, and more. But it doesn't stop there. Built is about making your entire neighborhood more rewarding. You can dine out at your favorite local restaurants and earn additional points, get VIP treatment at certain fitness studios, and enjoy exclusive experiences just for Built members every month. Built is turning a monthly expense into an opportunity to earn rewards and discover the best that your neighborhood has to offer. Your rent is finally working for you. Earn points on rent and around your neighborhood wherever you call home by going to joinbuilt.com/howto. That's joinbilt.com/howto. And make sure to use the unique URL joinbilt.com/howto.
Close your eyes, exhale, feel your body relax, and let go of whatever you're carrying today.
Well, I'm letting go of the worry that I wouldn't get my new contacts in time for this class. I got them delivered free from 1-800-CONTACTS. Oh my gosh, they're so fast.
And breathe.
Oh, sorry. I almost couldn't breathe when I saw the discount they gave me on my first order. Oh, sorry. Namaste.
Visit 1-800-CONTACTS.com today to save on your first order.
1-800-CONTACTS.
Mom, Dad, I humbly suggest you save some money and shop Amazon for back to school. It's for my growth, meaning my body's growing at an alarming rate. And clothes you buy me this year will be very small very soon. Plus, the clothes I love today will be out of style tomorrow. But at least your wallet doesn't have to be my fashion victim if you shop low prices for school at Amazon. Hopefully this is helpful. Amazon. Spend less, smile more.
On How To, we love helping people find answers for all of life's difficult, consuming, and messy questions. And if you have a question you want answered, a problem you want talked about, or a challenge you want faced with the help of an expert, send us a note at howto@slate.com or leave us a voicemail at 646-495-4001, and we might have you on the show. And we're back with our advice seeker, Jessie, and Dr. Sarah Wheeler, educational psychologist, ADHD expert, and fellow ADHD haver.
So if I want to do big things in this world, which I do, I want to do big things.
I think you already are, by the way.
No, I want to do big things. That requires working as a group.
Yep.
I don't like working in isolation anyway. I like being part of a team. I like the collaborative aspect of everything that I do. But there are people who have different skill sets from me, and I require them in order to do big things because I need people who can pay attention to the types of details that I can't pay attention to. So the trouble for me has come in, and this is, I totally mask this and I would never let this happen in my professional life, but like more on like where I'm working in this theater program and, it's more on a, like a volunteer parent basis where I have collaborators and I try to express what it is that I need from them and what I guess you would call it an accommodation, like an accommodation that I need to be able to do my best, work that it's.
I like workaround.
Okay, workaround instead of accommodation. Yeah. Or like the way that I'm going to react to something, because if I keep getting pushed into this box, I might explode because emotional regulation is part of it. Yeah. And I might have an explosive reaction to something because I burst into tears at the most inappropriate moments. And that's super embarrassing in a professional setting to be in an interview or like I'm working with somebody and then like I'll apologize a lot. And like I try to maybe point to the fact that my ADHD, it might be the reason that this is happening. And then to be told something along the lines of like, I'm using it as an excuse or a crutch. That's my biggest fear. And when that happens, I mean, and I'm not even kidding, I will literally collapse on my kitchen floor in a ball because it just sends you right back to childhood, I think. Like, yeah. So, it's like, I really just don't know the way to bring up and ask for workarounds or explain myself without feeling like I'm just making excuses, or that's at least how they're going to see it.
Yeah. You got right to the main sort of thought that I was having, which is that it feels to me that there's coming to terms with your own kind of like acceptance around it, as opposed to like, we internalize the medical model because from the time I'm a little kid, teachers are like, you're weird, just to take you to this special thing and get, and so you're just like, okay, something's wrong with me. And then as you, at a certain point in your life, you go, no, okay, maybe it's not that something's wrong with me. It's like my brain works this way. So I need to figure out how to match it up with what it needs and get it what it needs so I can operate. No judgment. Okay, great. The problem is, as we go into the world, other people are still operating on that same model. And other people are still like, you're weird, you're wrong, you don't do this right, why are you like this, whatever. So I think the question that I'm hearing from Jesse, which is what I was thinking, is like, yeah, how do we deal with the fact that this is where other people are at and our society writ large, infrastructurally, is in this place still?
Yeah, yeah. I will say this to my students, like, okay, this is the point in my course where you're like, Sarah, all of these theories are well and good, but what do I actually do?
Right.
So first of all, this is hard. I would never condescend to anyone and say, like, follow these 5 steps for, everybody accepting the way that you are and never having any problems. And it's long and it's unfurling and it's scary because there can be real consequences. You can Google all the stats you want about, ADHDers being more likely to lose their jobs, right? To get divorced, right? That is all real. And I think that changes are happening. I've been in this space for about 2 decades, and I won't try to convince you that the neurodiversity affirming model is at your job when you know it's not. But I am seeing so much more of it, and the kids are doing really well. The kids are teaching us so much about this. But just to respond to this piece about disclosing at work, whatever you want to say, I think that it's really vulnerable. I encourage people to experiment with using your diagnosis or not. You don't have to say, because of my ADHD. You can say, even if you identify as a neurotypical person, you can practice things like, it really works better for me when X, right? I will do this job twice as well or twice as fast if X, right? Is it possible for someone else to take the notes so that my brain can do what it does best, which is take this all in and make connections? And in order to do that, you have to spend some shame-free time with what brings you joy and works for you and what doesn't. And I think a great way to do that is to flex your muscles doing it with your kid.
Jesse's daughter got diagnosed with ADHD when she was 7. She's 10 now and on the precipice of a lot more independence and responsibility, all of which has led to conversations big and small so that she doesn't experience the same shame and anxiety that Jesse did.
Well, I think I have the benefit of being able to not single her out because I'm also diagnosed.
Yeah.
And so I have the benefit of saying, this is just the way our brain works. We, and as of the last, year, maybe we start to use the word, like, we have an ADHD brain.
Yes,
and
I love
I
that.
would always frame it in a positive context for her right now at the age that she's at. But it's like, yeah, sometimes you and I have trouble remembering things like this. And so we have to work on setting alarms for ourselves, or like, it's really hard for us to go to bed on time. Like, it's so hard.
Yeah,
and
you're not alone.
I know that stresses you out, and I know you wish it wasn't that way, but it's just the way that your brain and my brain are. Like, we share this, we have this in common. So and there is such a strong genetic component involved that most people with an ADHD kid are going to find out that one of their parents has it as well.
I do assessments as well. And I would say 90% of the time that I give a kid, I'm sitting there with a child and their parents talking about their ADHD. One of the parents goes either that they have a diagnosis, or they're like, this was me in school, or like the partner says, honey, like
Yeah.
nudge, nudge.
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know? Yeah, it runs in families. And so the way that you're talking about it, Jesse, by the way, is really beautiful. That's neurodiversity affirmation, that you are saying everybody's brain works differently. These are our brains. It's not a bad thing. Sometimes you have to work around stuff. Here's a slight kind of shift I'm going to encourage you to try, just to experiment with.
Please.
One is actually dividing your brain from your daughter's brains, because even, though you want that ADHD connection, everybody's brain is different. And the journey you want to take her on, that you are going to internalize for yourself and kind of mother yourself around, is that trying to figure out how your unique brain works and think about what matters to you to work around. Either, again, because it keeps you from something that you really want, or because you really don't like it. And then at the same time, how are you going to find more opportunities for the things that bring your brain joy or that your brain loves doing? Mm-hmm. When you model the way that your brain works, even if it's different, that will help her, right? When you say, oh my God, I didn't really plan dinner, but my brain was like so excited about these pumpkins that I bought these pumpkins, and maybe we'll make dinner out of them, or we should just get pizza, right? Like my brain had such a fun time with this, and how I'm going to work around it is we'll just get takeout. It's okay tonight.
I think it feels really practical with the way that I talk to my child, the way you said that, because sometimes I'll apologize a lot because I forget things a lot. Like, oh, you said you didn't wash that, favorite t-shirt that I needed, or my lucky socks. I will say things like, I'm so sorry, mommy is very forgetful sometimes. And maybe there's just like a little flip of the coin that is like, not an apology for that. I don't know what it would be exactly, but maybe it's like...
Sometimes I'll say something to my kids like that, this exact scenario where I'm like, yeah, mommy's brain sometimes doesn't remember all the things you ask it to do, but I picked you up popsicles at the store.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah. Yeah. I got tickets for that show you wanted to see.
Exactly, because my brain seeks out fun, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I wanted to ask about a distinction that I've heard you make. You talked about like working on stuff that you want to work on. How does one separate that out from like the stuff that if you've been masking for a long time and people pleasing, which can be a version of that. So a lot of times you get to a point where you don't know what is important to you and what is just, you just want to do it because you don't want people to be mad at you. How do we find that separation?
In my experience with a lot of therapy, the way that it works the best for me, and something I encourage my coaching clients to do, is following the joy. Because starting in the pain points can be so confusing, right? Because you don't know where the pain is coming from. It's just all so intertwined. So sometimes the joy is an easier path to follow a little bit of, what lights you up about this, right? And you'd have to do some work of if nobody was watching, right? If there was no embarrassment. Some people don't know the answer to that question, and they have to do some work to get themselves into some more kind of playful spaces. Or some people, honestly, I was in a job where I was doing way too many things that are really difficult for my brain related to executive functioning, which Jesse's talking about, planning and organizing and deadlines. And I wasn't in a niche that was really drawing out the things that my brain does really well and the things that I have to offer. And I had lost the joy, and I had to leave that job and reset a bit and start doing some other things to feel out where the joy was. It's almost like walking through the woods in the middle of the night. Where is that?
It's self-awareness. It's which is I'm so slow to self-awareness. And sometimes I think I'm just a really late bloomer, that it just has taken me decades to figure out what I really am good at and care about.
I'm still on that.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if that's a late bloomer thing as much as I think maybe that is something that happens when we learn to mask early. There's a reframing there, which is that we learn to mask and we get good at it because it's a working strategy. And so actually what we did as young people was quickly figure out a complex working strategy to get through a world that was hostile to the way we were so that we could make it. And that served us. And now we're at a point where we're like, gee, I don't think that's serving me anymore. And in fact, I can see some of the sort of negative side effects. So I have to unlearn that. So it's going to take a while to unlearn because we relied on it for so long.
That resonates so much.
Yeah.
That's exactly, okay. That's a reframing.
And there's a map and there's models for the camouflaging, right? Look, we have these neurotypical, quote unquote, normal models everywhere. I went like straight through from college to working to getting a PhD to like going into a job. And then I had a kid and it was like, the whole model that I was following fell apart because I was so unhappy. And then I had to look for new models and create them myself. And so I hear you talking about some alternate maps, some joy, some models in this theater community. Yeah. Even when you talk about what you're doing in that work, your whole body kind of changes. I think that's information, that's data, right? The other thing sometimes that has helped me is I ask people who know me well, what am I good at and what do I love?
Oh, what do I love? That's such a great question to ask people that know you.
And they're often better at that than I am. I have a close, like, little group of women that kind of foster each other's creativity. And we did an exercise where we each went around and wrote in one person's journal what we would describe it was that they did. Not just for work, but what did they offer, right? What did they offer to the world? So I have this journal page where 4 people who know me deeply tried to describe my offerings, my gifts. That page is more valuable to me than like anything on my website. And it's something I come back to when I'm like, what am I doing? Right? Am I just kind of a freak? Right? Am I a failure? Am I a mess? Where is my joy again? So that could be a fun activity.
I've tried to do that in my own head. I've tried to get out and look at myself from outside my own body and remind myself of what I'm known for, what I'm good at. I've never been brave enough to ask another human being to do it for me. So
it takes bravery.
Yeah.
But Jessie, you are highly lovable. I bet there's a lot of people in your life who would be thrilled to do this.
I have a feeling,
And do it for your daughter. Try doing it. You don't have to give it to her. Just practice doing it for your daughter and see how it feels. And if you can, you might come back to this in 6 months or whatever. Imagine you're talking to like little Jessie.
Oh God.
And see if you can write it for her.
That would be, wow. Okay. Well, let me just sit with that for a second. I just wanted to, I wanted to touch on something you said about follow the joy. And I wrote that in my notebook, and I don't know if you're surprised to hear this, but I'm really good at that. Though that is where sometimes that shame comes in. Because by finding the joy and by taking time to indulge in that, it feels like an indulgence. I feel like I'm making more work for my partner. I'm letting somebody down in some way because I'm not like gonna check all the things off my to-do list for the day because I went and followed that joy. And I bought myself a half-price theater ticket and went and experienced that. Or I just like heard there was going to be like a flash mob of like a pop choir, and I'm going to go do that. Or like go to the balloon store. And, and so
you might find, Jessie, that you get to a place where for your own happiness, you want to have some tools, some workarounds to say to yourself, okay, I can't do the big joy today. Is there little joy? Right? Is there little joy at home? Because the trade-off for the big joy will be too much. But you also have to know that you don't get to hold on to this gift of following joy that I guarantee brings other people joy, by the way, without dropping some balls, right? without forgetting to submit a timesheet. It just doesn't work that way. The more that you kind of can let go of the shame, the more, again, you can say when that matters to you and when it's okay. And by the way, you want to have these kind of brain talks with your partner too. One of the most influential things about the ADHD diagnosis for me is that my partner, who I've been with for 20 years, after I got the ADHD diagnosis and I started realizing that I needed all these neurodiversity affirming tools, I got to a place where I could say, hey, honey, I'm never gonna refill the gas tank. It's just not gonna happen. And every time I come home and you say, oh, you still didn't get gas, I feel like shit. But if you want, I'll go into detail about how painful getting gas is for me, how much it makes me feel like my brain is on fire and I hate it so much. So is there any way that you could just accept that? And maybe there's something else I could take off of your plate and be the holder of that does bring me a little bit of joy? Or is filling up the gas tank the thing that's going to make you, stay with me or not? And then I'm going to have to, learn some strategies, right? So that's a very different conversation, right? Than a lot of the ones we have with our partner that trigger us into shame and avoidance and all of that.
Yes. Yeah. And it does remind me of something I just heard recently about relationships, that successful marriages aren't 50-50. They're 60-40 with both partners trying to give 60.
Oh, that's sweet.
That it's like, you know what I mean? Like it's 60-40. Everyone's got to feel like they're doing a little bit more, but both people have to feel that way. And so it's like, yeah, I had this thing with my kid's mom. We were together for 13 years and it was always like I would get numbers mixed up. This is a classic thing, which was a problem with dates and money. So she would be like, okay, you have to pay $281 for the kid's soccer thing. And then I would think, and you have to do it on, May 15th. And I would think that I have to pay $271 on May 3rd or May 21st or something in my mind. And I would just skip it and it would drive her crazy. And after the diagnosis, she was like, oh, I used to get so mad at you for that because I thought you didn't care. But I understand now that it wasn't that you didn't care. It's that your brain just didn't hold it that way. And, it's like, this is some of the stuff that we have to do to love someone and to build a partnership with them. I'm so sorry that this is wrapping up because I feel like we're just getting somewhere, but Jessie, was this helpful to you?
Of course it was helpful for me. It's always helpful to be like in community with people who experience these things, and I'm not trying to explain it. Like, it's so hard to explain. I took some notes and I'm really looking forward to trying out some of these things in the way that I talk to myself and in the way that I talk to my child, and just helping me to continue to reframe this. I also really love that Sarah said there's no end state, I guess. It's a lifelong journey to continually grow more and more comfortable in my own skin.
And your daughter's going to teach you about that too. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And then she'll decide what tools she wants your help with.
A huge thank you to Jessie and Dr. Sarah Wheeler. If you want to learn more from Dr. Wheeler, you can find her at sarahwheelerphd.com. She has a Substack called Mom Spreading about parenthood, neurodivergence, and sometimes basketball. And she also sent us a ton of resources and links about ADHD that we'll be sure to put in the show notes. Do you have a problem that needs solving? Send us a note at howto@slate.com or leave us a voicemail at 646-495-4001 and we might have you on the show. And if you like what you heard today, please give us a rating and a review and tell a friend, because that helps us help more people. How To was produced by Rosemary Belson with Kevin Bendis and Sophie Summergrad. Joel Meyer is our supervising producer. Merritt Jacob is senior technical director and composed our theme music. Charles Duhigg created the show. Courtney Martin is my co-host, and I'm Carvel Wallace. Thanks for listening.